Chili is the trusted partner for pairing, matching, and data enrichment, helping companies hire better talent faster. Chili help recruiters connect candidates with jobs by enhancing the candidate experience, simplifying the hiring process, reducing hiring costs, and saving time and money. For more information, visit www.rchili.com.
What great ideas are so close within your grasp? Seeing other points of view, anticipating change, considering multiple possible turnouts, acknowledging uncertainty, searching for compromise. We're going to talk about how to get over those limiters of innovation so that you can extract better thinking from yourself and your team. So let's talk about how to win the future.
In this episode, we welcome back Matt Alder, frequent guest and expert in the field of talent acquisition, workplace future, and fellow podcaster, for his 5th appearance on the Marketing Rules podcast. Matt and I dive into a discussion on the latest trends in the TA space with a focus on those buzzwords that aren't AI. Welcome back to the Marketing Rules podcast. It's my pleasure to have back for 4th or 5th time, I cannot remember, but welcome back, Matt Alder. I think it's 5th. I'm going to say 5th.
Okay, let's go with 5th.
I think it's good. 5th time. I think this is a record for the podcast. I think you've been on here more times than anyone else.
There we are. Right. Well, thank you for inviting me back first and foremost. And it is always, as always, a pleasure to be here, and always a pleasure to be on other people's podcasts. And not have to think of the questions.
Yeah, you don't have to do the hosting, right? This is kind of like you get to be the expert today. So
I know it's
not that you're not an expert anyway. God, that sounded really rude.
I hope I can deliver, basically. So yes, that's me today.
I'm not going to tell people about your background. If they want to know more about you, they can look at all your details in the show notes, because you've been on enough times. If you haven't listened to the Recruiting Future podcast, then they've been living under a rock, really, in all honesty. Or read one of your books, and I'm sure you've got another book coming out soon, which you can tell us about at the end.
Always.
But today we are going to talk. We're not going to talk about AI and artificial intelligence. Well, we're going to try and not talk about artificial intelligence. And this comes off the back of a recent expo/conference that I was at, where the term AI was in the program about 115, 120 times, right? And the main feedback that I got was, man, there was a lot of AI on that agenda. And so I came to I started to think, well, you know what? Are we just talking about this too much? Is there stuff out there that's great in talent acquisition that's going to be trending over the next few years that we can talk around that isn't AI, that hasn't got anything to do with AI? And who's better to talk to me about this is the futurologist that is Matt Alder, basically, right? And now there's no. I'm not going to keep score if you do mention AI and chuck you off early or something like that.
Okay,
but I think that's a good place to start, right? We can talk, not to be too cruel, we will come on to what's good about AI in a bit, right? Towards the end, we'll kind of cover that, right? But there must be stuff that's going on that you have seen with all the interviews you've done, with all the stuff you're seeing going on in the TA space, that is non-AI focused, right? Or there must be stuff.
Yeah, there must be.
There must be, right? I hope there is, right? Otherwise, we're going to be. Otherwise, we are all doomed.
Could be quite a short conversation.
It could be.
Okay.
Right. Over to you, Matt. Kind of kick us off, right? What's the first thing that you can kind of talk to us about that isn't AI focused?
Right. Before I talk about not AI, I just want to make 2 points about AI.
Yes.
And I think we'll probably come back to this later, but I think that there is this kind of AI boredom that's seeping in. And a lot of that is because AI is just being used as this catch-all term for anything and everything. Mention AI and it'll all be fine. And particularly conferences. And we can talk about this later, but I would hate for people to take their eye off the AI ball because people are talking about stuff that isn't AI or using it kind of wrongly or all that sort of stuff. So that's the first one. The second one is absolutely, I can talk about things that are happening. Everything that's sort of changing in talent acquisition, though, is a response to the way that work is changing. And some of the things that are changing work are AI. So it's it's never far away. But let's talk about that. So I think the one thing that I'm covering more and more on my podcast is this whole concept of skills-based hiring.
Yep.
Now, skills-based hiring is probably second behind AI in terms of conference boredom, in terms of people talking about it and all of this kind of stuff. And there is a lot of hype and nonsense out there about what companies are doing and what companies aren't doing. However, I think that this is a kind of a critical response to the way that work is changing. So skills, the skills that people have, particularly technical skills, are going out of date very, 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 very quickly. And it means that when companies are hiring, they have to keep different things in mind. It's like if they want someone to stay in their business for a long time, they're going to have to look for different reasons as to why they want to recruit that person, because the hard skills that they're hiring for may be irrelevant in weeks or months, or certainly a couple of years. So to me, that's what skills-based hiring is all about. I think when you talk about skills-based hiring to a lot of people, the first thing they think of is like, well, that's like hiring people without degrees, isn't it? Or that's hiring people and not really worrying about the company they've worked for before. Yeah. But they still focus on the skills bit and they still focus on the hard skills bit. So it's like, oh, I'm just looking for people who can program in these languages, but it doesn't matter where they worked or how old they are or what university they went to. It's kind of a little bit of it, but I think the much bigger picture is around this whole sense of soft skills, which is something that in our industry we've talked about as long as I've been working. Oh, look at the soft skills, we'll do all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But most companies, most recruiters don't do it, or they do it in a very subjective way. Or they seem like a nice person. They think, we'll think they'll fit in. I'm sure they've got communication skills because they gave me a firm handshake and looked me in the eye when they spoke to me. So I think it can be wrapped up in lots of potentially kind of biased assumptions and all that sort of stuff. Now, what I think is very cool is kind of locked away behind paywalls and all kinds of stuff. There has been proper science to measure this kind of stuff. Yep. And it's been around for decades. And anyone who's using assessment or is working in occupational psychology already knows this. But for me, there's been this massive mismatch between how recruitment is done by most companies on a day-to-day basis and this kind of science that's sort of tucked away that actually tells you, helps you accurately, measure someone's soft skills. And what I've seen happening in the last sort of 2 or 3 years with technology, and not AI actually, just technology expanding the, lowering the sort of the cost of entry for companies to use this. We all have access to great tools that can measure these soft skills. And I think that when people think about recruiting and how they're recruiting people, you have to put this front and center, and you can measure it scientifically, and you can really, get a sense of who you should be hiring and how you should be who you should be hiring and why you should be hiring them. And, I think that's part of it. The other, whenever you talk to people about skills-based hiring, there's an issue with we're trying to map all the skills within our business. We don't really understand what we need. Everything's changing very quickly, and that is a very complicated issue. However, there are simple things that people can do. You can look at, you can get people who are already in your business to take some of these tests to kind of get a sense of what's going on. So it's not a reason not to start. But again, I think that a lot of the debate and commentary around skills-based hiring is kind of irrelevant. And I think actually soft skills or durable skills, as I've heard them described, the things that are with people for the long term, fascinating stuff. And I think that makes all the difference. So that's my kind of biggest non-AI thing.
And is that, again, this might be my ignorance, but does that tie into kind of like psychometric testing and that kind of area?
Yeah, it's exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. And, previously, if you look at kind of psychometrics, they were kind of expensive. The whole business model was, you had to kind of subscribe to get them. You needed your own occupational psychologist, or you need to borrow an occupational psychologist to analyze and deliver the results. And also, doing this on a role by role basis, you had to do all the research and all the mapping and all that kind of stuff. And it just wasn't cost or time effective for, the bulk of recruiting. However, there are a huge new set of tools out there now that are really accessible that will allow people to do this. So it's time to kind of step back and think about that. And ironically, there's also people building assessment tools with AI.
Yes, I was going to say. I bet you, because this sounds like very much a thing that kind of that leans into AI's wheelhouse, right?
It does, but actually, it doesn't have to. But I think there's a real thing to watch out for there, because I've seen lots of people kind of come into the market with, we've got this AI thing, we've invented a whole new way of assessing people. And it's kind of like, do you know what? There's peer-reviewed science on how you assess people, and it's there and it's been established for decades. And if you're basing it on that, that's great.
Yeah.
If you're a startup, you've never worked in recruitment, you've sat in a room and your AI has come up with a brilliant way of assessing people, I would just steer clear of that, because we have scientific research that shows how to do this. So that to me, I think, is the most exciting thing, because we could now do that at scale, and I think
that's interesting because
big difference.
Again, psychometrics is one of those things that kind of comes in and out of fashion as well, right? It seems to have kind of and it feels like maybe it's being rebranded slightly, right? You know, I mean,
it's kind of. I think you'll see this kind of show itself in a number of different ways. You know, kind of work sampling tools or gamification tools or all of this kind of stuff, and they're all many of them are all good at what they do, but they're all based on the same kind of core science or the same kind of family of core science, and that I think is really the thing that people need to look out for. And I didn't really know very much about this 4 or 5 years ago. It was kind of, as you say, it was just one of those things that kind of sat there and sounds expensive. But when I kind of started talking to lots of occupational psychologists, and it was just like, hang on a minute, there's proper science here that people go to university and study and do degrees in and doctorates in and all that sort of stuff. In recruitment, we're like, I use my gut feel because I've been recruiting for 20 years and I know what works. All right. And I was like, wow, hopefully we can kind of solve that mismatch. And I think that because work is changing so much, skills are going out of date, people need to think about recruiting differently. I think that kind of really drives that. Yeah. So that's my thing. That's my non-AI thing.
It's interesting, again, because, of all the things we do in life and in work, the sheer volume of data we have on jobs, people applying for jobs, the people who don't get the jobs, people who stay at jobs, just that sheer volume makes that just like a pot of gold, right?
Yeah,
for this
totally.
kind of thing, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's kind of so it's not very sexy, right? When you kind of get jumped down to it. But it seems obvious that if there's with that volume of data, of course, there's going to be you're going to be able to prove things scientifically because you've got just a sheer volume of data.
Absolutely, yeah,
right,
totally,
yeah.
1,000,000%, and it's such a weird disconnect that no one really talks about, but just seems very strange. And again, I think it's because of the kind of the legacy pricing around this. That if you wanted psychometrics, then there was a way to do that. It was slow, it was expensive, it was not something that you do in a small company for a one-off position necessarily. But time and time again, people, especially in small businesses, people will recruit someone based on not a very scientific way of judging their skills and attributes, and it'll go horribly wrong. And the power of hindsight will tell them why. So I would hope that this is a trend that continues and really makes recruiting more scientific and smarter, and really helps with the way that jobs and work are changing.
Okay, so that's one of our kind of non-AI things to
ask me for another one.
I was going to ask you for another one, but you know what? Let's move on, right? Because we've covered about kind of 10 minutes on that, and I think that's a really good thing, because actually you're right. It can be handled by AI, but there is still a need. It doesn't have to be, right?
No,
it's called, and it could.
I mean, it's
really
kind of there are technology. It's technology platforms that are making it accessible, but AI doesn't have to necessarily be part of that. Okay. Or the kind of AI that we're talking about anyway.
All right. Let's jump to AI then, right? Now we can go kind of like we can go all in on AI, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure this is something we could probably talk about for hours, but some of the things that you think are coming down the road that that are AI focused, that AI based, that maybe we don't really know about just yet, or that's just on the fringes, that's kind of making its kind of kind of weigh in. We all know basically so much tech out there in a minute has just got AI chucked into the name of it, and whether it actually is AI is questionable. Whether it's just if this then that, whether it actually is using large language models or etc. is kind of questionable. Is it just a plug-in for ChatGPT or something similar? But again, you're at a kind of cutting edge. You must have all these conversations around. So what do you see that's AI based that's maybe not on everyone's radar just yet, and that might be in the next kind of couple of years, you think?
Yeah, I think the problem with AI at the moment is a lot of the marketing around it. And actually,
as a marketeer, I don't.
Shocking, eh? Absolutely shocking, I know. And actually, a lot of the conversations about agentic AI and all this sort of stuff, they're someone described them to me the other day as AI bros, kind of like just sit there, talking about the world's going to change tomorrow because of all of these things. So there are certain things that are in conversation now that actually aren't possible right now. And maybe that's what's sort of driving some of the disillusionment. But that's very, very much what's coming over the hill. To me, I've been on a bit of a kind of a voyage of discovery with this in the last sort of few months, and actually understanding what's possible now is it blows your brain if you actually look at all of the different tools and really what you can do with them. The social media was aghast last week at the new ChatGPT release and the images that it can create from, just mind-blowing stuff. So I think that there's a lot of stuff out there that isn't talked about. And I think the problem is people will look at LinkedIn and they'll see 15 posts that have been written with ChatGPT really badly. So because they've been written badly, they're using the same words. Let's dive in and do this. And also, these are people that we know, and we know they don't talk like that. So it's like, hang on a minute, you used to write 3-line sentence updates, LinkedIn updates, possibly with swearing in. Now you're writing this kind of 500-word essay.
Yes.
You're using
the Oxford comma and everything now, right?
Always the Oxford comma. Although I've been using Grammarly to help me with my writing for about 4 or 5 years, and it's just bashed the Oxford comma into my head.
As a sometimes copywriter, I kind of annoys the heck out of me.
What's that long dash called?
I don't know.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah, but I know the one.
Long dash. Anyway. So people see that, seeing it being used badly, and then they think that is the sum total of its powers. But actually, you can learn how to use these models to write just like you, and that's kind of really interesting. So I think what it means is this really weird sort of mix of stuff. I know I'm not really answering your question, but
you are in a way though. You're kind of setting the scene, right? Because
exactly. So you've got
right. There's stuff out there we don't know we could do.
Yeah, which is the thing. So you've kind of got, on the one hand, you've got these out there conversations with middle-aged American men sitting in rooms with nice sofas on podcasts, basically decreeing that Armageddon's coming by December. And then you've got people looking at really bad ChatGPT written LinkedIn things and going, do you know what? Forget it. I'm not interested. I'm not listening to all these conference things, and it's just whatever. However, in the middle is where the action is. And I think that the potential of AI is actually mind-blowing. I think it's someone described it the other week as the biggest conversation around technology that we'll have in our lifetimes, bigger than the internet, bigger than everything else. So it's just kind of really important to get the right perspective on it. And I think that if we look at what's kind of happened in recruitment so far, we haven't really got beyond automated scheduling and automation of kind of certain processes, which was actually possible 3 years ago.
Which is kind of robotic process automation.
It is robotic process automation. It's exactly that. So we haven't really moved. We've kind of started to adopt that, which is good, but we haven't really moved past that. There's kind of large language models for this, and in use in various things. So we haven't quite seen the full impact of this yet. But what's interesting for me is some of the bigger software vendors are now coming to market with what I call sort of proper AI solutions that they've built from the ground up, not where they've just kind of added in a large language model to help generate your job posting and they call it AI.
Yeah.
It's stuff with, agents that do amazing things, that kind of automate everything, all of this kind of stuff. And I think that is kind of fascinating. And so I think that it's looking at these sort of these tools that are coming up that can, I suppose, smartly automate lots of recruiting and take lots of things away. So I think that's where we are. That's what we need to look at. Yeah. In terms of the future, if you look at the promises of agentic AI, the promises of these agents being able to talk to other agents, it's phenomenal. So if you look at the theory, so I can create an agent.
Yeah.
So let's say I want to look for a job. Okay. I want to look for a job. So I create an agent to look for a job for me. That's what the agent does. So it doesn't need any more instruction. So it'll go out, it'll build other agents, it will talk to other agents, it will build co-pilots and all of that kind of stuff and do whatever it needs to get me a job. And if you think about the implications of that, it's some quite profound stuff there. You've basically released a kind of an intelligent bit of software that is going to go and try and integrate with other bits of software and do what it can to try and find me a job. And I think if you look at it like that, and you look at that from the corporate side and the recruiter side and the job seeker side, that is mind blowing, because so many of the things that we do, the processes that we have, just become irrelevant because these agents just go and do it. Now, is that going to happen before Christmas? No. Is that going to happen next year? Probably not. Is it going to happen the year after? Don't know. So it's it's kind of a vision about where we might end up to, but I think that's what we kind of need to think about. It's just it's kind of the potential of this is mind blowing, but it's just getting a good grasp on, also getting a good grasp on how much of that is possible right now.
Yeah. Well, because this is interesting, because famously Apple have been struggling with this, right? They've kind of like been putting back and back something that is akin to what you've just kind of said. You can kind of talk to their AI and you can kind of get it. You say a very simple phrase and then it does all that kind of clever stuff for you, scheduling, doing this, doing that.
Exactly.
But famously they can't get it to work. Right,
because it doesn't work at the moment. That's the thing. And anyone who tells you that you can do that it doesn't work. I mean, that's not necessarily true. I think you can do it to a limited extent or a very expensive extent or whatever. But that's the vision. That is the vision. I remember when APIs were a mythical concept that software could talk to each other without, being deeply integrated. So we have to say that's where all of this technology investment is going towards, that kind of vision. So, we need to kind of be prepared for that and think about that and also really understand the technology, how it works at the moment. So, anyone who's listening who is thinking, AI is not coming from my job, there's no way AI could do recruiting, et cetera, look past those identikit Oxford comma filled LinkedIn posts and just look at some of the things that this can do that are possible.
So before I let you go, Matt. So if in a couple of years' time, if I wanted to, I'm going to take this from a recruitment as becoming a recruitment agency, right? I'm just going to take that as an example. I had no recruitment experience. Could I literally? Is there a situation where I can literally kind of set up being a recruiter with no experience and get all my AI to do it on my behalf, because I've simply just told it, look, contact these. I want to work in this niche. I want to work with these kinds of clients. I want to find out what they're right. You go off and do that. Contact those people. See if I can help them fill that. And on the other side, find the people to fill that role. Just go do it, basically. And I'm going to sit here as the puppet master, or not even that, really, in the middle, just watching my bank account tick up, basically.
Wow, there's a deep question there. That's like, I know. It's what's the history of, what's the future for recruitment agencies as a whole? I think that you have to focus on what humans can do that AI is unlikely to be able to do in the next few years. Yeah. So that's things like, collaboration and connectivity, very, very human things. And a lot of those human things sit very nicely in recruiting. So I think the answer to your question is no, because where's the differentiation? Well, if everyone can do that, then what's the point? There has to be something where expertise and differentiation comes into it. But technically, I don't see why that wouldn't be possible. And I think what people really need to think about is what is actually my expertise that I bring to this that AI just can't do. And I think if you look at that question really deeply, you'll find some potentially quite shocking answers. So, can AI match CVs as good as I can? And the answer is no, it can't match them as good as you can. It can match them infinitesimally better, a billion times better, because at the end of the day, job descriptions, CVs, just words.
Yep.
This kind of software can benchmark this against millions and millions and millions of CVs all at once. So yes, it can do that a lot better than you can. And it's just trying to find out where's that balance. And I think that it's a difficult process, and people really just sit down, think about it, and really think about where is my expertise in this? What is it that I can do? And I think it's kind of how you control the machines and what you ask the machines that's going to be that's going to really be the way forward. How you collaborate with technology in a way that's unique to you. I think that's probably where we're going.
Yeah. Matt, it's always a pleasure. Have you got a new book coming out at some point?
I haven't got a new book coming out. However, I have. I've got some great new content coming up later in the month. My podcast is going to hit 10 years old, 700 episodes, and I'm releasing a whole set of reports and really interesting stuff around that in about towards the end of April.
Brilliant. Well, we'll look out for that. And if this doesn't go out until that time, we can always kind of include some kind of links where people can where they can find those and find out more about that kind of stuff. Because as we were talking about previously, there's a lot of data you've kind of got there, and I'm sure there's a lot of interesting things around trends over the last 10 years of what people have and haven't been discussing.
Yeah, exactly that. I'm kind of really analysing how the way we talk about the future has evolved over 10 years, and I can already say that the preliminary results are fascinating.
I'm sure.
Fascinating.
Oh, well, I can't wait to read it and see that myself. But for now, Matt, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the Marketing Rules podcast on Apple, Spotify, and all other major podcasting platforms. I've been your host, James Whitelock, and I hope you can join me and more amazing guests next time.